I am 87. I want to tell you about the year I stopped proving things. For 60 years, whenever somebody doubted what I could still do, I answered them with my back and my hands. I did not argue. I lifted. I carried. I finished first. Then one winter I sat down in my own kitchen with a cold cup of coffee, and I counted 7 things I had been proving, over and over, to people who had never once asked me to. 7. I wrote them on the back of an envelope, and when I finished, I did not feel ashamed, and I did not feel proud. I felt honest. Plain and honest, the way a swept floor is honest. Come close if you have a minute. Pull your chair around the way we used to sit. I am not telling you I gave up. I am not telling you I became less than I was. I am not telling you one thing about anybody's health. I am telling you about a show I was putting on. 7 small performances, staged for people who were not watching that closely. Have you ever caught yourself doing a thing only because somebody might be looking? The year I let the curtain down on all 7, my days got wider, not easier. Wider, there is a difference, and I mean to hand it to you. My grandmother had a saying she used on all of us, and she used it most on the men. She would say, "The one who must be seen as strong is carrying 2 loads. There is the load, and there is the seeing of it, and the seeing is the heavier of the 2, because a load you can set down at the end of the row. The seeing you carry into the house, and into your chair, and into your sleep." My grandfather said it shorter, the way he said everything. He would watch a young man sweating to prove something to nobody, and he would say, "Let them think you are weak. It is cheaper than being right." I did not understand him for 60 years. I understood him the winter I turned 86, in a hardware store parking lot with my arm shaking, because I had carried in one trip what wanted 2. So here is the first confession. For 40 years, when 2 of us carried anything, a beam, a freezer, a wet sheet of plywood, I took the heavy end, before anybody could offer it to me. My neighbor's grandson would reach for the tail of a plank, and I already had the front of it up on my shoulder saying, "I've got it," like it was nothing. That year I let the boy have the heavy end. He took it. He did not say a word about it. He did not think a single thing about me that I had spent 40 years making sure he would not think. My grandmother used to point at the 2 pines behind the barn after an ice storm. One had bent all the way down until its needles were buried in the snow, and it came back up in April. The other had stood perfectly straight until it snapped clean through at the middle. She said, "That one won every argument it ever had with the weather." Before I go on, let me set one thing down beside you. Everything my grandmother and grandfather handed me, I gathered into a small book called The Native Way. It is not long. It is the plain sayings, the kind I have been quoting at you since we sat down, written out so they do not stop here in my kitchen with me. The link is down in the description. No pressure at all. I am here either way, and the fire is the same whether you ever open it or not. I would rather you sat with me and never read a word of it than feel pushed toward anything, because pushing is one of the things I quit. It is there if your heart wants it. If it does not, you have lost nothing, and I have lost nothing, and the 2 of us are exactly where we were a minute ago. That is all of that. It is set down beside you, and I will not pick it back up. Now let me give you the second confession. For years, when a person leaned in and said a thing over again, louder, the way people do with a white-haired man, I corrected them. Every time. I would say, "I heard you the first time," and there would be an edge on it. I thought I was defending something. What I was really doing was informing a stranger in a feed store that my ears were mine and none of his business, over a remark about rain. Now I let it go by. If a man says it twice, I answer twice. It costs 4 seconds, and it costs him nothing. And seconds are cheap to me now, because I finally have them. My grandmother said, "The river runs loudest where it is shallow, over the rocks, and it runs quietest where it is deep enough to swim a horse." You can hear a shallow river from the road. You have to walk down to the deep one. The third confession is a foolish one, and I will tell it anyway. When we loaded the truck, feed, firewood, a boy's furniture on moving day, I raced. Nobody ever said go. I just made certain I got there first, with the bigger arm load, and stood at the tailgate like a man with time to spare. That year, I quit racing. I let the young ones get there ahead of me. I carried what fit in my 2 hands and came up the path last, and the load arrived just the same. My grandfather used to hold up an autumn leaf and say the tree does not lose the leaf lets go. The ones torn off by a wind take bark with them. The one that lets go leaves the tree clean and ready for spring. The fourth confession. I sit down partway through a job. I have for a while now. In the middle of splitting wood, I will sit on the block 2 or 3 minutes and look at the ridge, and then I stand up and finish. For years, I made sure nobody saw that. I would wait until the yard was empty. If a truck came up the drive, I would stand and take hold of the maul and pretend to be studying the grain of the wood. Now I sit down in front of anybody. I sit while my great-grandson stacks. I sit while the propane man writes on his clipboard. Do you know what it cost me to keep that hidden? Half my attention, every job, for years. There is a wind that comes down through the canyon most afternoons and lies down at night. It is still the wind. It has not resigned. It rests. And in the morning, it comes back down the same canyon it always came down. The fifth confession is the one I am least proud of. I had a friend named Walter, 41 years. We built fence together across 2 properties, his and mine, and one October his hip went bad, and he got slow on the post holes. He would set 3 and rest. I could see the line he was working, and I could see it was going to take him until Christmas. So one Saturday, while he was at his daughter's, I went over and finished his side, 22 posts, strung the wire too. I told myself it was a gift. It was not a gift. It was a sentence with my name on it, spelled out in cedar across 900 feet, where he had to read it every morning of his life. Walter thanked me. He thanked me carefully, the way a man thanks somebody who has taken something. He did not come over for coffee that winter. He did not come the next one either, and then there was no next one. My grandmother said, "When you finish a man's work for him, be sure you are not finishing him." I heard that sentence at 9 years old, and I did not understand it until I was standing in a churchyard with my hat in my hands. The sixth confession. When somebody asked me how I was, I did not answer. I recited. I would say, "Oh, I still get up at 5. I still cut my own wood. I drove myself to town Tuesday." Nobody had asked for any of that. A woman at the post office said good morning, and I handed her a list of qualifications, like I was applying for the job of being myself. Now I say, "I am well," and I ask about her knee. That is the whole exchange. And it turns out that is what she meant by the question in the first place. An old pine does not put its rings on the outside where a man can count them. It keeps them in, under the bark, and it does not tell you the number. It stands there being however old it is. And the seventh confession, the one that took the longest. I used to defend my own name. When young men measured me short, when one of them said, "Careful, he'll throw his back out," or laughed about the old man's truck, or explained to me how a chainsaw works, I answered, not loudly. I had a way of mentioning what I had done, where I had worked, what I had lifted in 1971. I gave testimony about myself to people who had not asked. When I was a boy, there was a man everybody called Old Man Standing Pine. 2 young fellows talked about him one whole summer, how he was finished, how his place was going under. He never said a word back. That fall both of them were haying his fields for wages, and he never mentioned it, and I do not believe he thought about it twice. My grandfather told me why, standing at the window in a storm. He said, "Watch it. The mountain does not answer the storm. The storm has an opinion and a whole night's weather to spend, and it spends all of it. In the morning, the mountain is the mountain." I want to be careful with you here, because I know how a list like that can sound. Writing those 7 down was not the same as hating myself for them. I have watched men do that, take an honest look at their own life, and turn it into a verdict, and nothing good grows in that ground. Every one of the 7 was a thing I did, a habit, a motion of the hands. Not one of them was a thing I am. That is the whole difference, because a thing you do can be set down at the edge of the field and left there, and a thing you are follows you into the house and sits at your table. And here is what nobody told me. Letting people think I am weak did not make me weak. It made me quiet. Whatever strength I had was still exactly the amount I had. Nothing in my arms changed on the day I stopped announcing them. What changed is that I got the effort back. All those years of watching to see who was watching, that is a great deal of a man's day, spent on an audience that was never in the seats. I am not softer than I was. I am unhitched from a wagon I had been pulling on my own time. So let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl before she stood up out of a chair. 7. I stopped taking the heavy end of everything I carried with another man. I stopped correcting the ones who said it twice, louder. I stopped racing to the truck to get there first. I stopped hiding that I sit down partway through a job. I stopped finishing another man's work to show I still could. I stopped answering, "How are you?" with the list of what I can still do. And I stopped defending my own name when a young man measured me short. Now turn every one of those around and hold it up against your own days. Which end are you reaching for? Do you correct? Do you race? Do you wait until the yard is empty before you sit down? Whose work are you finishing? And what is it telling him in his own kitchen every morning while he drinks his coffee? I am not asking you to answer me. I am asking you to answer the envelope. I know there is a question sitting in you right now, because it sat in me a long while. It goes like this. Is it too late for me? I have been this way, 50 years. Is it too late for me? I cannot promise you what will come of it. No honest old man can promise you that. What I can tell you is that 87 has not taken one thing from me that this asks for. I can still notice. I noticed in a parking lot with my arm shaking. And after the noticing, there is one ordinary choice, one afternoon, one heavy end you do not reach for. That much is still yours, and nobody comes and takes it. Now I would like to hear from you. Of the 7, tell me which number landed closest to home. The racing, the correcting, the one about Walter's fence. Put it down in the comments for me. I read every comment that comes in the evening, with the house quiet, and I sit a while with the people who wrote them. And then come back tomorrow. Sit with me again. There will be a chair, and there will be a fire, and neither one of us will have to prove a single thing to the other.